All right, so as our introduction just said, we are jumping into finding surface area of rectangular prisms. And as a class, we sat and we talked about designers of boxes, such as this Lucky Charms box, and that surface area is really important for them so they know how much design space they have. And I have a couple other examples here of where we see rectangular prisms all around us. We see some Girl Scout cookies. I know some of you just bought those. It's that time of year. Kleenex, of course, you see those all the time. I got some video games down here. Those boxes that you're looking at are rectangular prisms. And then, of course, some skyscrapers, some buildings. A lot of buildings have rectangular prism features. So just wanted to give you a taste, just a little glimpse of what we're looking at here. And then jump in now to the process of how we actually go about calculating the surface area of any of these figures. So on the notes in front of you, you see a page that looks very similar to this. And you see that our question for today is simply, how do I find the surface area of a rectangular prism? So the page that you're looking at below has several different rectangular prisms that we're going to walk through, and then you'll of course try some on your own. So looking here at this first one, I just want to note a couple features about rectangular prisms, and we kind of talked about this with our Lucky Charms box, is that there are two sets, or there are two sides that are equal or congruent in any rectangular prism. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of them here. If you look right here, I'm going to highlight this in blue. We have this rectangular prism side, and it has a match. It has a pair within the figure, and I'm going to highlight that for you too. It's kind of here in the background, but you see that these two sides match. They are the exact same, and that's what's true about rectangular prisms, that they all have a pair. They all have a partner. So you see those in blue. We see these little guys. We see this one up front, short side, and we also see the one here in the back. And then, of course, the very top and the side that this is resting on as well are matching sides. And I know this looks a little messy. I'm just trying to point out to you these parallel and congruent sides that we're dealing with. And it's actually going to really help us out when we go to find surface area. It'll make our job a little easier. I know this is a bit of a mess, but it does show that each side that you look at has a matching side as well. So we're going to look at this one side at a time. Our goal really is to find the total surface area, and we're going to break that apart just by sides that we see. So I'm going to start with this side that we see right up here in the front. We see it's a rectangle. Clearly, we're dealing with rectangular prisms today. And so the first thing I want you to do, and I know that the formula we're using all day today will be the same, but we're going to get into some shapes where it's not always just rectangles. So I really want you to get in the habit of setting yourself up using your formula sheet and really being like, what is my shape? What is the formula? We know our formula is base times height. And right here, it's very clear that this rectangle is 2 by 10. So that rectangle itself is going to be 20 centimeters squared, the area for that. But like we said earlier, there's two of those. And so rather than sitting here and doing that formula again, we just need to remember at the very end when we add up our total that there are two sides that are 20 centimeters squared. So that is the first side. We're going to jump in here then, pick a different side, and I'll use a different color then to show you. Let's look at this little side up here at the front, which of course has the matching side here in the back. And I'm going to start the same way. I've got my area formula, base times height. In this case, the sides that we see are 5 by 2. So the area of those rectangles are 10 centimeters squared. And again, there's two of those that we'll need to use at the end. And then the last set of sides that we see are the top and the bottom. I'll again use a different color. We see this guy up top. Would be kind of like the cover of our Lucky Charms box. And this guy down here at the bottom. And it can be tricky sometimes to figure out what the dimensions are. We can see down here we have a 5 and a 10. That's talking about this side length here by this here. It's really just kind of a scavenger hunt to figure out where the sides are or where are the dimensions for that side. So in this case, we have area equals base times height. We have 5 times 10, which we know to be 50 centimeters squared. So now we have each of the faces and their individual measures, but to find the total surface area, we need to add them all together. So you're going to see this step down here at the bottom. I'm going to just take all of my numbers, and since there are 2 of them, we're going to use them twice. So starting with my 20 centimeters squared, I need 2 of those. Sorry about that. So we're going to have 20 centimeters plus 20 centimeters. We have 2 sides that are 10 plus 10, and then we have 2 that are 50 plus 50. And that you should always have for a rectangular prism 6 numbers, because there are 6 sides to any rectangular prism. So that's a good way to double check yourself. We add all of these together and you should be getting 160. And since we're talking area, we still are dealing with units squared. So 160 centimeters squared. So that's really the process here for these rectangular prisms. You should have 3 different sides that you are finding areas of, and then at the very end totaling them all together to get the total surface area. So jumping down here to example number 2, we're going to do the same thing, starting with our same process of looking at each side individually. My eyes are immediately drawn to this side over here, just because on my paper here it's kind of grayed out. So that's the one that I'm going to start with, and we know, and it's hard to see, but its matching side is going to be this guy right here, that you can't even see the whole side for. But we know that our formula again is area equals base times height. Here we have 4 times 2 are my base and my height, and so that gives me a total area of 8, of course, centimeters squared. So that takes care of those 2 sides. Now there are 2 other unique sides that we need to look at, and so I'm going to start with this guy right here, or go next to this guy right here in the front. And again, we can't even see the side that matches it, but we just need to know what is true about rectangular prisms, that back here there's a side that matches this completely. But as you see, I don't have any measurements listed on these sides here in front of me. So this is where we have to get a little creative and just take what we know to be true about rectangular prisms. Because if this side here is 7 centimeters, which is what this tells us, this side also needs to be 7 centimeters. And if this side here is 4, then the same needs to be true about this side here, which is 4. So you're taking a little mix and match here, just noting the dimensions. But that means that this rectangle in front of me, our formula base times height, is a 7 by 4 rectangle. And we know that 7 times 4 is 28, of course, centimeters squared. And then, as always, we should have a third unique side. We've taken care of 2. That third side that we're dealing with now is going to be the top and the bottom rectangle. We have this guy here, and then the rectangle down below that we are sitting on that goes kind of down here all the way around the bottom, and if we add some dotted lines, it would go right there. So we're going to start the same. We needed our formula, area equals base times height. Here we see clearly up at the top that my height, or base, whatever you want that number to be, is 7. So the only question then is, what is this side length? And so that's where we have to put our puzzle piece together. We come down here, see that this is 2, therefore this side up here will be 2. So this rectangle is 7 by 2, or 14 centimeters squared. But to find total surface area, we need to add all of these together and take into consideration that there's not just 3 faces, there's 6, and so each of these numbers needs to be doubled. So we can write that as 8 plus 8, plus my 28 plus 28, plus my 14 plus 14. And if you want to shorthand it, we know obviously if there's doubles, you could go as far as writing 2 times 8 plus 2 times 28 plus 2 times 14. That would be a little shorthanded way to write that, and I'm definitely okay with that as well. Then we actually have to do that calculation, add them all together or multiply out, and you should get a surface area of 100 centimeters squared. For example number 2. I'm hoping that your work is looking very similar to mine. When you come to check your notes with me, I should be seeing these different steps all the way around. I should see what you're doing in all the different sides so that I can clearly follow your thought process and make any corrections if there needs to be. But if you're not showing me your thought process, then I have a hard time jumping in and helping if there's an issue. I'm going to do one more example here with you, and then I'm going to set you off to do your check-in and then move on to your practice assignment. I'm going to use my colors again just to show my different sides. We see this rectangular prism has dimensions 4 by 4 by 8. And so really you just need to start with one side here on your own. I'm going to start with my top and my bottom piece. So I have this and this side up top. I'm going to set up my formula again, base times height. And we see that the top and the bottom are a 4 by 4 rectangle. So that is going to be 4 times 4, or 16. No units are given, so we just say units squared. That one was the one that jumped out of me first, was that top and bottom piece. Doesn't matter where you start as long as you're starting somewhere. The next one that jumps out at me, just because that's where the numbers are these side boxes. And again, each one there's 2 that are matching, so I'm highlighting those 2 for you here in blue. Those are the parallel and congruent faces, and we see that they have dimensions 8 by 4. So writing out my base and height, I have 8 times 4, which gives me 32 units squared. And then of course my last set of faces are the ones right here in the front and then in the back. I'm going to highlight my back face first here. We see that guy, and then this one right up here in the front. And these dimensions aren't as neatly labeled for us, so we're going to have to again do some piecemealing together for that. But we see this 4 here in the front, which would be this side or this back side, the top as well, the 4. And then we see the 8, that is our height. And so that 8 would also carry over to this right here. We have a 4 by 8 rectangle. And just to save some work, we could do the same process, area equals base times height. But if you notice, we did already do those dimensions. We have 8 times 4 over here. And the reason that that is true, and now that we only have these 2 sides, is we have 2 numbers that are the same. This process, or this won't happen most often, but if you notice now, not only are these in green 8 by 4, but what we had earlier in blue are 8 by 4. So there's 4 faces that have this area, and then just our top and our bottom are 16. So really we can save ourselves a step here. Instead of writing that whole process out, we can just make note that there are 4 of them, not just 2, that have that area. So then when we go to find our total surface area, we're going to add everything together. I have 2 faces that are 16 units, so 16 plus 16, or 2 times 16. And then I have 4 faces, like I said here, that are 32 units. So I'm just going to multiply that 32 by 4, or of course you could add 32 4 times. And you should get a total area of 160 units squared. So hopefully you're seeing some cool patterns. You're coming up with a system of organization for yourself. Maybe colors are really helping you just grab a hold of the sides that are in front of you. Please use those, show that, and organize your thoughts in that way. Maybe your system looks a little different than mine, but I should be able to follow your thought process. I should be able to see what exactly you're doing and not just a bunch of random numbers all over your page. So below example 3, you should see example 4 looks like this, and you see that this is your check-in problem. So at this point, my video's coming to a close. You should go ahead and set yourself up, find the surface area of this rectangular prism, and as soon as you have done that, you can come and check in with me. We'll make sure that how you're showing work and what you're doing, the process you're working through, is working for you, and then you can start your practice assignment.